Before I begin, I'd like to turn it over to Jan Hill, who is the Director of the Office of Indigenous Initiatives, to give our welcome and prayer. Welcome, Jan.
Skinagoa Sewa Guego, Watquanu Horado, greetings and peace to all of you. Welcome. Kunjokwa Sawadu Husio, Skani Gari Wesa, E Chirwanu Horado, Ne Sungwa Diso, Ne Wahi, Arosa Anyo, Ne Gari, Ne Ohandu Gari Wadekwa, Ungawana Hetstu. Ona Sawadu Husio, Skunjokwa, Ne Egadi, Ohandu Gari Wadekwa, Ungadi Wanungode. Please lend me your ears for a few minutes as we gather our minds together to offer the words that come before all others, and offer our greetings and thanks to the Creator of all things in the natural world, as I have been taught to do and as is the custom of my people, the Haudenosaunee. This is what we have been instructed to do before any business shall come to pass where two or more people are gathered together. Agwego unska ndiro wait nuni ne ungwat nigura dano dea tinuarado ne agwego yunki yena wase ji owen jade. We gather our minds together and offer our greetings and thanks to all of the things on the earth, all the green and growing things, the medicines, foods, plants, trees, shrubs and grasses, the waters and the life within the waters, and to our relatives, the animals. Agwego unska andirwa wait nuni ne ungwat nigura dano dea tinuarado ne agwego yunki yena wase ji karon yade. We gather our minds together and offer our greetings and thanks to all of the things in the sky, the birds who sing their beautiful songs, the winds that come from the four directions. They're going to be a little vicious today. Our elder brother, the sun, our grandmother, the moon, our grandfathers, the thunders, and the stars in the heavens. Nana onigadi, agwego, echirwanu horado, nesungwa disong. And finally, we offer our choicest greetings and thanks to Sungwa Disong, the creator of all things. And so now the words that come before all others have been said, and we can all focus on the reason we've gathered here. If any of you are carrying burdens, at this time, I'd like to invite you to leave them at the door for the time that we're gathered. And that's so that we can all concentrate and focus on the reason that we're here today. You can choose to pick them up on your way out the door when we're finished if you want to, but I'll encourage you to leave them there for Sungwa Disong to take care of. Today, I'd also like to acknowledge this sacred land, which has been the site of human activity for many hundreds of thousands of years. It's my understanding that this territory is included in the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and Allied Nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around Great Lakes. We acknowledge and thank our ancestors for continuing to live in a way that ensures we remember. Watquanu Horadu, Gano Shuni Yungyats, Garakwine, Catherine Brandt, Goha, Yundajets Ne Agate Nistonha, Dano Lennox Hill Goha, Rumwayats, Neragate Niha, Wagate Nyatu, Ganyunke Haga, Diwa Unhoju, Gundege Nide Wagenu, Gundege Ganagare. Ganu Shuni, she is making a house, is what they call me. My traditional name that was given to me by a Turtle Clan mother in consultation with my sisters. My deceased mother is Catherine Brandt, and my deceased father is Lennox Hill. He was Wolf Clan. I am Turtle Clan of the Mohawk Nation. I'm from Gundege, and that's where I live. In a more formal introduction, I would continue on to tell you about my family, my children, my grandchildren, who my grandparents are, and so on. For today, I will just say that both of my parents and all of my grandparents, at least 6 generations back, are Ganyunke Haga, or Mohawk. I can trace my ancestry back to 1784 when my people, the Mohawks of Fort Hunter from the Mohawk Valley in Upper New York State, arrived at our resettlement at the Bay of Quinte in Ontario. It's customary and respectful that before I address a group, the only bad thing about notes is you got to keep your place. I place myself in relation to who I am within my family, my clan, and my nation. It's important that I position myself so that you know where I am speaking from, what informs me, and where I am in relation to you and this land that we stand on today. It's important to pay respect to ancestral and traditional territories and local Indigenous communities. By doing so, we honor the Indigenous ancestors or stewards of the land and speak to our personal or social relationship with the land. To be meaningful and respectful, a territorial acknowledgement needs to be intentional. This is a time for us to give thanks, consider our individual and collective role in the stewardship of Mother Earth, and in building relationships between Indigenous people and communities and the rest of the country. I would encourage all of you to consider the land that we sit on today. I'm also the director of the Office of Indigenous Initiatives at Queen's University. It's my responsibility to work towards the implementation of the recommendations from our Truth and Reconciliation Task Force report, which was completed in 2017. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome anybody externally to Queen's, and for those from Queen's, I'd like to welcome you to the day, and I look forward to learning from all of you today. I think it's very important, all the work that's being undertaken here, especially all of you working in the health sciences. The health of our people is of utmost importance. Without healthy peoples and communities, we cannot carry on the work of healing and reconciliation to make the world a better place for those who follow us. Nyawakiwahi, I thank you for your kind attention.
Thanking Chantel Richmond and Kate Big Canoe for giving us a great introduction to the Indigenous Mentorship Network. And now we're going to be transitioning into a hearing from students in terms of what their experiences of mentorship have been. And we'll start by my own introduction. So my name's Colin Bailey, and I'm a settler PhD student working with Dr. Lisa Levesque. I grew up in Treaty 3 territories in northwestern Ontario, and since then I've come down to Kingston to finish my master's, and now I'm doing my PhD in shared Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territories. And one of the things that I really drew from Chantel's presentation was the fact that knowledge is rooted in those relationships. And so as part of that, I want to acknowledge some of the mentors that have had a huge impact on my own choices in terms of where my research has gone and the type of work that I've done. So of course, starting with my supervisor, Dr. Luce Levesque, Heather Castledon, Vanessa McCourt, Donna Ivamy, and Jan Hill have all had a huge impact on those decisions that I've made. And some people who you saw in pictures but aren't necessarily in the room, also Dr. Alex McCumber and Bob Lovelace, who is in Global Developmental Studies, have had a huge impact on my own career. And so I'll start off by just introducing our 4 speakers here who are going to tell you about their experiences also being part of the Mentorship Network program. So starting off with Brittany. So Brittany is of mixed ancestry with on her mom's side coming from Mohawk territory in Tyendinaga. Brittany grew up in Bowmanville, and she's currently completing a master's degree in the School of Kinesiology and Health Studies. Andrea is also a master's student working with Dr. Luce Levesque in the School of Kinesiology and Health Studies, and he's of mixed ancestry with his family coming from Cornwall Island and Akwesasne. We have Jesse, who's from Tyendinaga, Mohawk, and he is a second-year medical student who's hoping in the future to work in a rural or remote community here in Southern Ontario after he's done his school. And we have Tara, who is a 4th-year nursing student who is Cree and is hoping potentially to go into medical studies after she's done her undergraduate. So before we begin with some specific questions, I'll just get each of the speakers to come up and introduce themselves. So we'll start off with Brittany.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I'll begin by introducing myself, and then throughout that process, I'm going to also address a few of the questions that we have. Okay, so I'll begin by introducing myself by situating myself to the lands that we're on. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are situated today on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, of whom were the original stewards and caretakers of these lands. So through the teachings that I've received, before one speaks, they should always introduce themselves by acknowledging who they are and where they're coming from, as my experiences largely influence my perspectives and the way in which I look at and think of things. So Sego Sewa Guego, my name is Brittany Macbeth. I'm a master's student at Queen's University here, studying under the supervision of Dr. Lisa Levesque in the School of Kinesiology and Health Studies. I'm Ganyang Kehaga. My roots are in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory, which is just a short hour drive down the road, but I grew up in Bowmanville, Ontario, off reserve. So pictured above, I've included a few of my Mohawk ancestors, and I've included, there's 4 generations here, and I've included this because their experiences have largely influenced my experiences. They've helped shape and mold the way that I think about things, and I carry them with me wherever I am and in the work that I'm doing. And I'd say my ancestors, my immediate family, and then those faces who have yet to come, the next generations, are the reason why I'm in this field of research and why I do the work that I do. So it reminds me too that this research that we do is relational, and I'm constantly reminded by these people and by everyone around me that relationships really are everything. So next I want to speak about one type of relationship which has all brought us here today, and that's mentorship. So mentorship defined as a relationship in which a more experienced and more knowledgeable person helps to guide a less experienced and less knowledgeable person. So we've all been involved in mentorship one way or another. Mentorship from our families, from our grandmas and grandpas, from our aunties and uncles, from our parents, from coaches, maybe teachers, and even from our peers and from the youth around us. So it's through mentorship roles, both as a mentor and a mentee, that have brought me here today. So going back to 4 years ago, young Brittany, a first-year Queen's student, I was actually quite disconnected from my culture, and I became more connected to my Indigenous roots when I arrived here at Queen's University, which is so ironic. But anyways, I became involved in the Aboriginal Student Center through a volunteer opportunity as a mentor with the Aboriginal Youth Leadership Program. And this role taught me that mentorship, just like any other relationship that we can have with people, it's reciprocal and it goes both ways. So I say this because even in the role of a mentor for those youth at the Aboriginal Youth Leadership Program, I would say that I learned probably more than I taught. I felt that I taught them. So they taught me a lot about who I was and a lot about my cultural identity. So during my time as a community mentor, the staff at the Aboriginal Student Center actually connected me with Dr. Lisa Levesque in my 2nd year, and she's currently my graduate supervisor, and her research takes a community-based participatory approach. And one of her longtime community partners, Ganawage, implemented their own mobilization toward diabetes prevention. And so kind of bringing those 2 things together, what I was doing with Right to Play as a frontline worker promoting type 2 diabetes prevention with the youth, I was now taking on this role as wearing at the head of a researcher. So it was really a great fit to pursue this path. So most recently, I've had the honor and the privilege to become involved with Ontario's Indigenous Mentorship Network program in various capacities. And this began last January at the launch event at Western University, and meeting the entire team of mentors and mentees and also community members, I felt that the presence of this network really could have a lasting impact on the choices that I would be making in relation to my career path in academia or not. So I'd like to acknowledge and express my gratitude to the network for that, and to CIHR and all 13 institutions who have contributed to making this entity possible. It was an honor and privilege also to be successful in my application for a scholarship for this school year, and I cannot express how grateful I am to have been a recipient. Okay, so I guess, do we just, I can stop here if we want to, okay.
Hello, everybody. So as Colin mentioned, thank you for the introduction. My name is Andrea Ayeni, and I'm also one of Dr. Lisa Levesque's master's students going on into my final year. And again, as Colin mentioned, I have on one side of my family, originating from Cornwall Island in Akwesasne, Mohawk territory. It's about an hour and a half east of here. Yeah, so I don't know how much more to expand because I'm not sure how we're going to jump into the questions, but I guess to give a little bit more about myself, I did come to Queens I completed my undergrad. Sorry. Yeah, I get this problem a lot. Roof clearances are usually my biggest issue, but I can deal with this too. So I completed my undergrad here at Queen's University as well. I did my undergrad in psychology with a minor in computing, and I loved the work I did, but I found that sitting in my lab kind of behind a computer screen wasn't exactly giving me the right type of connection to beyond these walls that I was looking for. So I found myself coming, through actually the 4 Directions amazing email list, which if you aren't on, get on it. I found about this opportunity of Dr. Luce Levesque looking for students, and I went in and chatted, and the rest is history. So I found myself doing Indigenous community health research, which is a whole nother ballpark of nuanced difficulty, but also it's very rewarding, and it's been a real, I guess, breath of academic fresh air, I'll say, because you kind of make these real worthwhile experiences and you grow in these like social networks. And I guess we're going to talk all about these social networks because really that's what mentoring is. I guess I'll expand more on this when we get to the formal questioning. But I think if we use the word like mentor, mentee, you might get this very like closed idea of you have an individual helping an individual. But I think really like everyone around us can be a mentor because everyone has something they can teach you, and you have something you can teach everyone, since we all have different like knowledge bases and backgrounds and strengths. So I think anyone can be your mentor. Like, you know, it can be a supervisor who's teaching you how to be an academic. It could be a friend who's teaching you, you know, how to dress. I'm looking for a friend like that. So really, I think the network is the strongest word to focus on here because it's the network of people helping people, and we all have strengths that we can share with others, and we all have unique backgrounds and quirks and specialties that we can all cross over in this like web, rather than this classic idea of like the old mentee and then or mentor and then the young mentee and this like one-on-one experience. But yeah, I guess I'll stop it there for now. It's nice to see everyone.
Okay, Jesse, you can come up and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jesse Miracle, and I'm from Tyendinaga, Mohawk Territory, the local reserve here, just 45 to an hour outside of town. And I'm a second-year medical student here at Queen's University. So I guess for me, what I'd like to talk about is just a little bit of my gratitude towards the mentors that I've had just along the way so far. But before I'd like to do that, I just want to echo the idea of mentorship being a network and a community. I think that was a really good point, where the friendships and the people that are around you, and when you move through life, the people that you meet, there are little moments where people can share things with you and that have the most impact, I think. And there are those long-term relationships as well that can, where people get to know you and they see the potential that you have, who can also speak a lot into your life as you go through it. So I'd just like to say a few things about who's impacted me the most throughout my journey here. So as I mentioned, I'm from Tyendinaga. I didn't have a lot of exposure to like the medical health profession at all. That was just sort of a big aspiration for me as a young person growing up. And I didn't have a lot of people in my life who could speak to that or who could inspire me towards that. I mentioned long-term relationships. I know all of you could probably agree that your parents have a big impact on your life. And I know for me, my parents on the res back home, they really worked hard to give me a lot of opportunities and to break open doors that they really didn't have as young people. As evidence, I'm here in medical school, so I'm very proud and thankful to my parents for opening up those opportunities for me. And another proud brother moment for me, my sister, who's 17 years old, just signed a record deal in Toronto. So that's pretty great. So just saying. And also, I'd also like to thank the people at Youth with a Mission program. This was a program that I did right after high school. They worked with me for 5 months. I was in this program, and they really got to know me as a person and really took the time to speak into my life and help me grow individually. So I'd really like to stress how those long-term relationships and those intentional investments into someone's life can really help change that, as well as just those little moments that we spoke to earlier. And also, just those little moments. There have been people I've met along the way. So for instance, someone who's facilitated my journey a lot has been a guidance counselor at my undergrad who helped me practice my interview skills for medical school. And they really went above and beyond and took the time to invest in my life as an individual. And I would like to thank her. Mary Ellen, you're great. Thanks so much. And also, there's little interactions in my career as well. So people who I've gone to observe in hospital, surgeons, anesthetists, people like that, who have given me opportunities to do little things like procedures like that, have really inspired me as a person and really sort of guided my path so far in medicine, in what career I'm going to go into, sort of working my thoughts towards what I'm going to do with my life, really, at the end of the day. And also like to give a shout out to Dr. Green back there. I'm working on 2 projects with him, and he's really given me some opportunities as well to work within Aboriginal health research, which has been really cool for me. Yeah, so I guess I'll stop there and we'll continue with questions. Thank you.
Kara?
Okay, so hi. My name is Tara Wilson. I am a 4th year nursing student here at Queen's. My roots are in Northern Ontario in a small community called Long Lac. Don't know if anybody knows it. You know it? Okay. Yeah, so I was invited last minute to speak on this panel, but I jumped at the opportunity because I thought that it was such a, I looked a bit into it and it just sounded really amazing and something that I definitely want to get more involved with, because, so mentorship has been really, I would say, very useful to me. I'm sorry, I'm such a terrible public speaker. If I were to speak about people who have been great guidances to me, if I were to start, I would start with my mother. She was the first person who introduced me to my Indigenous roots. I remember I was watching Pocahontas and she was like, Tara, you know, like, you're Aboriginal. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then she was like, yes, you are. And she's like, and that's something to be proud of. And she always kept me informed about current events, and she instilled that activist side of me. And then my aunt as well, because I always knew that I wanted to go into medicine. I wanted to work in the health field. And I was talking to my aunt. I remember being like, I think I was like 11 or 12. And I was like, Auntie, like, I really, really want to go to medical school. What should I do? And she's like, well, Tara, you know, like, you're going to have to do an undergraduate degree. I didn't even really know what that was. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, like, what do you think I should do? Like, I'm thinking like maybe like some science. And she's like, well, you should do nursing, because then it's great practice. You're in the field. You'll develop tons of great interpersonal skills. And if you don't get in right away, you can go start a career. And so that is what guided me into nursing. And from there I came to Queens. I met amazing people at the Four Directions Aboriginal Student Center. I became involved with QNSA. I was last year's co-president. So that has been really amazing. And actually one of the people that has been a mentor to me this year was our head of our Northern Foods Initiative, because we sponsor a family in Nunavut. So yeah, Brenton, he got into medical school this year, and I've been talking to him. I'm like freaking out about all of my applications, and he's been like reading all of my essays and sending me corrections. And he's like, if you have any questions about the entire process at all, or like interviews, reach out to me. I also got in contact with another Queen's medical student. She would be in second year this year, and she was a nurse, is a nurse, still an RN. So yeah, she was a great help. Like we sat down for, I think probably 2 hours, and we went through like every single medical school, and she was like, these are the ones, like, this is what they look for, this is what you need to get. So just opportunities like that have been really helpful to me. But in my medical career, I really want to work in remote First Nations communities. And when we're speaking about that reciprocal relationship, a large part of what I want to do is go into the communities and yes, offer the knowledge and guidance that I would have in terms of health promotion and health wellness, but also be able to learn a lot about my own culture. I particularly want to work in remote First Nations communities in the James Bay region, because that's where my ancestry is from, because I really feel like I missed out a lot because of assimilation. So yes, that's all.
Okay, thank you all for your introductions. So now we're going to start with some specific questions that we have for our student mentees here. So my first question to the group is, what does mentorship mean to you as a learner? But adding to what Andrea and the others have said, because mentorship, you're also a mentor as well as a mentee. You can also add to what does it mean to you as a teacher as well, if you'd like. So Brittany, if you can get us started.
Okay, so I did put together some slides. I didn't realize it was supposed to be sort of organic, but I'm still covering kind of all the same things. So in this segment of the panel, I'm just going to touch on what mentorship means to me. And now we all may have like slightly different perceptions of that. So I look forward to hearing from you guys after this too. Feel free to like chime in even afterwards with questions, and hopefully we can get a little bit of a discussion on what kind of mentorship means to you guys too. So, but for me, drawing back on what I said earlier, mentorship is just a type of relationship. And I think we should keep it that simple. So something else I already mentioned is that relationships are everything, and that they're so important. So by association, mentorship too is everything. Mentorship's relevant, and it's needed for anyone and everyone, as we had said before, no matter what level of training you are. So, but for me, I guess, as someone who's early on in my career, and also someone who's not kind of sure what they want to do with their life, and that every opportunity seems exciting, mentorship has been really important in deciding kind of what direction I take, and has shaped where I am today. So I want to share some pictures with you guys for the next few slides. So mentorship's important in shaping people, especially young people, in reaching their full potential. We know this. But for me, another thing that's been really important in mentorship is that in-person interaction. And don't get me wrong, even though technology has allowed us to connect with people virtually, and that's a totally good thing, I think there's something uniquely special about being able to get together in person and have that connection spiritually. So I believe that I really felt the importance of this and starting at the mentorship network launch in Western, or at Western, and I continue to feel how special this connection, this in-person connection was by connecting with so many like-minded people at other events that the network has hosted. So, and I think this network too is rooted in Indigenous knowledge and culture in that way, because if I draw on Chantel's earlier definition that she mentioned about Indigenous knowledge and how it's really that cultural and spiritual relationships within our environments and within persons, I think that association between mentorship and how culturally rooted it is in this context, it becomes very clear. So another piece of what mentorship is, and I've included a few pictures from the undergraduate workshop. It involves reciprocity. So mentorship isn't just one-sided, and we have definitely talked about this too, how I think it's most noticeable when you take on the role of a mentor as opposed to a mentee, because when you're a mentee, you think, okay, I'm just sitting back, I'm just absorbing, I'm here to learn. So it seems one-sided. But when you're taking on that role of a mentor, there's a bit of a responsibility that comes with that in guiding others by sharing your experience. But it's much, much more than that. And you usually, when you come away from the role of a mentor, you realize how much more you've actually gained and learned from the process and from those mentees as well. So yes, and I think this event here was a really great example of that feeling for me, because I volunteered to be a graduate student mentor for this event. I was supposed to be going and sharing my story with undergraduate students who are considering pursuing a career in a health-related field, whether that be medicine or health research or nursing or counseling or anything like that. And I came away feeling inspired and empowered all over again by those undergraduate students. So this event was filled with storytelling. It was filled with sharing circles, emotion, questions, friendships, beating as we see, and great food, to name a few highlights. Okay. And the final aspect of mentorship that I wanted to mention is its lasting impact. So though the role that you hold as a mentor may have a start and an end date if it's a job, or that the Indigenous Mentorship Network program funding has a start and end date, I'd like to think that mentorship doesn't have a start and end date, and that the impacts that mentors and mentees have on each other are everlasting. And that these relationships and friendships that we've built have the potential to be lifelong. So this is why I think the work that the network is doing is really life-changing for Indigenous health scholars. And this slide, I've included some photos of the IMP summer school that I attended in June this year. And I can say that I'll be carrying the teachings that I gained from this event through the rest of my life, and the relationships that I built there will hopefully be lifelong. And because I'm able to draw on these positive experiences even after leaving the event, I'd like to say that mentorship is good medicine. It's healing for me to be able to draw on these experiences after leaving the environment and moving forward as an Indigenous health scholar. So yes, that's what I have.
Would any of the other panelists like to speak to that question? What does mentorship mean to you? Okay, seems like we have consensus that Brittany did a great job covering that question for us. Okay. So the next question that we have for the panelists are, what have you gained from mentorship in the past? And I think we'll start with Andrea for this question.
Taking me out. Hello. Okay, that'll be fine. Sure. Hello again. So it's kind of an obvious question if you think about like what has mentorship done for you, because I guess what you are is a product of the mentors in your life. And again, maybe I'm applying it to basically, or to simply to anyone who's taught you or helped you develop the way you developed. But I think at its core, that's what a mentorship, or the network of mentors you've had around you your whole life, that's what it is really. So how you formed and how you ended up, or so far where you are, is a product of the mentorship in your life. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but there's that old psychologist, Vygotsky, anyone? Anyway, he's all about the zone of proximal development. So you have this like area of what you can amount to that's just outside of your current capabilities, and you can get there with the help of others. And I don't think he actually used the word mentor, but that's kind of what he was describing. So I think really you have all these influences in your life from preschool, from infancy to finishing university as an undergrad, and you think you have things figured out, and then you realize you don't, and then you maybe start a master's degree, and you think I'm a master's student now, I'm a good academic, and you're not. So learning is truly lifelong, and I'm sure, I don't know if I'll reach that point, but I'm sure anyone who's then maybe got a position at a university or a postdoctor is probably like, oh, I'm a PhD now, I know what I'm doing. And maybe they get that same experience where they're like, the other postdocs or their supervisors are just like, no, you don't, like, you have so much to learn. Not rudely, of course, but I think mentorship, I guess to go back to the question stem, is mentorship has brought me to where I am. So if I think back to first year, and the strongest of students, a combination of, I guess, older friends I had who were, I guess, better role models, and I guess certain profs that I started getting interested in their work and started getting interested in their courses and volunteering in labs. All these influences around you kind of change your trajectory towards where you're going to end up. And I think where I am is a direct product of having the impactful mentors and influences in my life. And I think that answer is, I guess, very general, but that's the truth. So, yeah.
Would any of the other panelists like to speak to that question? What have you gained from mentorship in the past? Okay, consensus again. Thanks, Andrea. So our next question for the panelists is, what are you looking for in mentorship or in a mentor? And we'll start off with Jesse.
Hi again. So for where I'm at personally within medicine, I think the most pertinent way that a mentor would be able to speak to me would be really like a multitude of ways, because I have yet to choose a specialty personally, which is what every medical student is continuously grappling with in their 4 years of their medical undergrad. So that is one very big category that a mentor could speak to for me, and that people along my journey have spoken to. Another thing would just be who I'm going to become really as a physician when it comes to how you conduct yourself, what community are you going to go to, what research are you going to engage in, what are you passionate about? That's a big one for me. If I see someone that's really passionate about their research or their work or how they communicate with patients, like one of the experiences that I've had, I was in a observership with one of the physicians at Hotel Dieu here, and just the way that he interacted with patients and the care that he showed to them really kind of showed me what I want to be in the future. And so I continued doing observerships with him just to learn a little bit of how I could potentially interact with patients like that in the future. So just little interactions like that with people that I have seeked out have really spoken to me and really shown me better ways to act with patients. Also, just in general, how to navigate medical school and the medical system as well, just because my parents are not in the health field whatsoever. My dad is a musician and my mom was a ballerina back in the day. So they are not really able to speak to a university experience in general, let alone going to medical school. So for me, I've kind of had to seek out mentors and people that are able to speak to that experience for me. So I know that there's a ton of people in this local community and throughout my observership experience that have really given their time and their knowledge to me as I've gone through this time. Like I did 6 weeks this summer of something called observerships, which is where I hooked up with one doctor each week, and they were willing to take the time out of their schedule and take the time out of their day when they're seeing patients to talk with me and tell me how they came to their conclusions about why they interact with patients the way they do and things like this. So people that you meet along the way that are willing to take the time for you, willing to teach you, and just willing to sow into a relationship with you, I think have made the biggest impact for me. And on top of that, the people that have a continuous relationship who've gotten to know me over a long period of time and who are able to encourage me and challenge me in ways that they know I can do better as well and keep me accountable. I think that's a really big part of mentorship as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at mentorship and how I would like to see a mentor. Like for me, I think if you go through those observerships and meet new people, that's really good. But also if you have a mentor that you really intentionally meet up with as well, and that you're active about the mentorship relationship, saying, hey, you're my mentor, let's go and I'll buy you a beer and we'll talk about your life, my life, what I've done. Let's debrief. I need to hear about your experience so that I can do better in my own life. So I think those are my thoughts on just generally how I would view a mentor and how I think mentorship would have the most impact on people.
Any other thoughts from the panel? What are you looking for in a mentor? Do you want to come up?
I very much agree with everything that you spoke about. And it just got me thinking about specific traits that I look for in a mentor. Someone, first of all, who is kind and going to be respectful, who is also going to be patient, but is also going to be honest with you. Personally, in nursing, for example, instructors, like sometimes you just find them so scary, and like you go home and like you cry, and like I've like gone through my evals and not even wanted to open them up, and then I look through it and I realized that like I was making a way bigger deal out of everything, and that what they had to say was actually really, really helpful, and it very much did guide the rest of my care that I was to give. And I've also had lots of amazing interactions with different physicians as well. And I've, through my clinical placements, I've been able to see the way that physicians will interact with the medical students as well. And I think that it's great because they do expect a certain level of preparedness, of knowledge, of participation. But I have seen some scenarios where the physician was in the position to be a mentor, and really the only thing that they did was tear that person down. Like, it's sad to say, but that does happen. But then I've also seen some really, really amazing physicians who go about it in a different way, where they're really respectful, but they let that student know that they were not performing at the level that was expected of them, and to come back when they're the next time, just be more prepared. So yeah, those are really important aspects to me. And even just having a mentor who's willing to reach out without even asking. There was one amazing physician at KGH, sorry, he would take the time to answer my questions. I'd be like, oh, like, what's this procedure? And he's like, oh, okay, like, come in, like, I'm gonna like tell you all about it. And he'd take the time to talk to me, and he'd be like, Tara, like, do you want to come in and observe this procedure? And it like wasn't even my patient. So opportunities like that have been really amazing. But yeah, just, it depends what type of mentor you're looking for. If it's maybe more of a spiritual guidance, or if it's something educational where you want someone who's really knowledgeable in what you're hoping to attain. Yep.
Would the other panelists like to speak to this question? Okay.
Hi. So I'm not actually extending on the question, but something I think, because I don't think it's going to come up in a later question, and it's more, thank you. It's more directed towards, I guess, students and younger students. And I think we're going to talk a lot, or we have already spoken a lot about like what to look for in a mentor and why mentorship is important and this and that. But I think to flip the tables in 1 second, especially this is the perfect place to do it, where we're talking about what makes it like a mentor, a good mentor. What are you looking for in a mentor? I think the best advice I can actually give, so I'm not just saying like generic stuff that's not helping you. The best advice I can give is what you're looking for in a mentor, they're looking for in a mentee. So if you want someone who is going to invest their genuine interest and time in you, you're going to want to invest your genuine interest and time in them. You're not going to want to, you know, like if you're looking to start working at a prof's lab as an undergrad, you're not going to want to kind of generally go up and say, oh, you know, I need research experience, I'm kind of interested, you know, so do you have any openings? Like, you want to show them that you do take their guidance serious, and that you are interested in what they can do for you and what you can do for them. So I tutor a lot, and a lot of questions I often get in tutoring is, oh, like, how do I get into research? Because every lab's always the same. Or how do I go talk to profs? And it's always the same answer. You know, you go on their lab website, you read a couple papers so you can bring something up. And even that might be too much if it's more casual, but however it means, if it's academic wise, if it's a different way, you need to show to the mentor that you're going to invest the energy, that you're going to genuinely be interested in that relationship that can form, and not just expect that, you know, they're going to give that to you. So I think when you are thinking about what you're looking for in a mentor, make sure you're also matching those things back to them, so that you will find yourself in a cohesive sort of relationship, where there's a genuine, I guess, supportive dynamic going on, rather than you just kind of expecting, or you finding yourself in a place where maybe the mentor is not making much time for you, or this or that. And that, you know, you don't want to immediately assume they're just a bad mentor. Maybe you just haven't, sounds awful. What I'm saying is take it seriously, and they'll take you seriously. Because I think that's the crux of it. And it's something, I think it's easy to forget, especially when you think, well, this is my everything. I need research experience so I can get into a master's, so I can get into med school, yada, yada. But they also have like 300 students in their class, right? So I'm not saying you have to stand out, but if you're genuinely interested, show them that you're genuinely interested. Show them that you're going to take the time, the energy, and everything to make it not just worth their while, but also a cohesive experience for them to take you on as a student, because that's what's rewarding to them. Not just academically, that's what's rewarding to them as a mentor, right? For them to have someone that is genuinely benefiting from their influence. So yeah, take it seriously.
Okay, so our final question for the panelists before we open it up to the audience to ask questions is, how has mentorship influenced your career thus far? And we'll start off with Tara with this question.
I feel like I've talked a lot about this now. Yeah, just, I'm going to answer a different question. I'm talking about something I haven't talked about yet, because I've already talked a lot about that. One thing that I'm really looking forward to is interacting with other Indigenous healthcare providers, as well as Indigenous peoples, both in urban and non-urban settings, particularly because I know that I want to go work in remote First Nations communities, but I don't know how that's going to exactly play out. I don't know what agencies I would be working under. I have interest, like just visions of like working in potential or like setting up trauma centers and these sorts of things. And I know that I'm going to need mentors, and I'm going to need people that who are more knowledgeable and who are more experienced, or maybe, well, definitely well more established in even geographical regions than I am. So that's going to be really important, just networking and building those really strong relationships with people. And yeah.
Would any of the other panelists like to speak to that question? How has mentorship influenced your career thus far?
Okay, so how has mentorship influenced my career thus far? So I guess if I think about where I was at before I even came to university. Actually, I kept my personal statement of experience essay, and in there I had wrote down, I'm going to pursue a graduate degree after my undergrad. So I already had plans before I even got here. That was gonna do even more school. So I think the mentors have guided what route I took on that path. And I guess, so before I came to university, I knew I wanted to work with people. That was the main thing. I want to work with people, don't know what capacity that may be. So I decided to major in psychology because that's the study about the human brain. It's the study about why we do what we do, why our human behaviors are unique. And after that, I actually had quite a distaste with research. I felt as though it was all a hoax. It was all made up. We can just use statistics to make whatever we want come out of it. It was missing that human aspect, and it was missing that kind of, that human entity. It was all just numbers, and it was really not the greatest. So I thought, I'm not doing that. I'm going to work with people in some other way. And it was actually Erin Sutherland who had said, oh, you should look into OT. You should look into occupational therapy. You'd be good at that. So I thought, okay, I'll look into occupational therapy. And that's what I applied to as my graduate degree. Originally, that was what I was set on. I'm going to be an OT because that was a linear path. It was something that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to school for OT. Then I look for a job in OT. It's easy. It's so cut and dry, but I ended up doing my undergraduate thesis project with Dr. Luce Levesque and getting involved in that project there. And I realized how different research could be in this field when it was with people. And something Lucy had said to me is like, I work with people too. You want to work with people? I work with people. You look out the window, that's my lab right out there, right outside in the real world. So that was definitely something that molded my decision in pursuing a graduate degree as a more research-based as opposed to a more professional trajectory. And something that was scary, I will admit, about pursuing a graduate degree in research is not having that cut and dry, like, okay, I'm going to complete my master's and then I'm going to look for, what job do I do after this? I don't know. And that's just it. It's like the doors are open, and there's a lot of different ways you can take even a master's degree. And that was kind of exciting too. So it was all about the mentors that were able to like teach me about what this will lead you to in the end. So thinking about not the next step, but 2 steps ahead, because that'll guide that'll help you choose what you want to pursue even after your undergrad. So yeah.
Would any of the other panelists like to speak to that question? How has mentorship influenced your career thus far? Okay. So for the next 10 minutes, we're going to open it up to the audience to ask questions of our student mentees / mentors. So I will keep my eye on the webinar chat as well to see if any questions come up, but are there any questions from our audience here for our mentees that you would like to ask? Yes. I'll just get you to come up so that those on the webinar can hear you as well.
So yeah, that's a really big question. As an individual who grew up on a reservation, I know that there's a lot of insensitivity that can occur when it comes to people going into, clinics wherever Belleville, Kingston area is where people generally tend to go because there isn't a clinic on Tyndonega where I'm from. And I know that there's a lot of things like implicit bias and just general like low-key racism that actually does happen. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that is in need of change. And what's a good thing that's happening is in my undergrad medical education, there is some acknowledgement of that that's going on here at Queen's, and there is teaching that's going on to help us to learn more about how to be sensitive and how to properly approach encounters with people of all different backgrounds. I think that's a really, really big and pertinent thing that we have to learn there at school. But I think there's a lot of ways that it could be improved. I think there's something like 10 hours of teaching on this topic in first year of med degree, and that's not a lot of time, and it's really sort of a shame that that's all we can learn. In my personal musings, I guess, the thing that I think would have the most impact would be doing a placement or having like a mandatory placement in an Indigenous territory and just learning about the people there, maybe even just living with a local family there, seeing how life is done, seeing how they interact, what the community is like. If something like that was instituted for each of the students, I think that would have a really big impact on just how we interact with our local Indigenous population here in Canada. And I'm sure it would also speak to how you approach situations with people from other backgrounds as well. Yeah.
I completely agree. I think that one of the things that we can do is start it at the institutional level in the students that they choose. I think that medical schools and nursing schools and other health professional schools need to put a large emphasis, and I think that they are doing that a lot now, put a large emphasis on diverse perspectives and really putting an emphasis on having empathetic healthcare professionals who are able to see from another person's perspective, even if they don't necessarily know a lot about the histories of every single culture of that each patient could potentially have. Just being able to step back and recognize that and be willing to learn from their patients and not necessarily just jump to X, Y, and Z. This is what I need to know in terms of their health, and being able to take on just seeing the patient as a whole. So I guess that would be an Indigenous perspective, being able to look at the person holistically, mind, body, spirit, pardon, and emotion. Yes, thank you. So Yeah, that's something that is really important to me, and I've personally experienced that. I had a 15-year-old patient in the, she was in the critical care unit because she had attempted suicide. And right away the nurse went in and she just began doing the typical screening questions that she had to go through. And I could tell that this girl, she was scared and she was really uncomfortable. And she was just answering the basics of what she needed to answer. And being an Indigenous person, I don't know, I could just imagine the life that she had had. I knew that she was in the foster care system. I didn't know why. So I just took the time after to really just develop that that relationship with her. I disclosed my identity with her. I told her that I was Cree from Northern Ontario, and she immediately opened up. She told me about the life she had led, the abuses, what brought her here, and we were just talking and talking. And then her foster care mom came in and she was like, oh my goodness, like I've never even seen her talk to a person like that before. So I think that that's one way that all healthcare professionals can really benefit from, and definitely should be implemented into practice. Yeah.
Any other questions from our audience? And for those who are listening in on webinar, if you have questions, you can type it into chat and I can ask it of our mentees. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing. It's been great to learn from your expertise and your experiences. My question is really about how we seek out mentors. And from some of the experiences you shared, there's a very happenstance nature to how we're actually in the company of people who can potentially mentor us, right? And maybe you're in a class, you think the person's expertise really gels with what you want to do, or you happen to be shadowing a doctor who cares for patients in the way you wish to emulate. But maybe the expertise or knowledge isn't in our immediate vicinity. And so maybe you want to know from people who have been working in northern communities in a nursing capacity, et cetera, right? So my question is, what infrastructure is in place to allow us to seek out those potential relationships, even if they're outside of our institutions? And what opportunities are there to liaise with other, whether they're grad students or other people who may be at similar stages as we are, as we're pursuing those potential futures? And I guess, could the Indigenous Mentorship Network be a hub where that information is legible to us? And maybe it already is, and I don't really know that yet. But I guess that's my question for you. How do you seek out the kinds of relationships you need, and what could be facilitated by institutions like Queen's to make that more possible?
Yeah, for the webinar folks, absolutely. So wow, it's hard to repeat. Generally, the question was how do we go about seeking out these mentorships when maybe the type of knowledge or the experience we're looking for might not be right proximal to us, and can QMNP oh my God, I'm creating acronyms for us. Can IMNP or Queen's IMNP act as that hub where these connections, where grad students can seek out connections with other grad students or find the mentors they're looking for? I think the answer is officially yes, and of course unofficially yes. But what I mean to say is, I think that's the main goal here, and I think it's already, the ball's already rolling. We have days like today. This is of course local to Queens, but the webinars online. Many events like this, online webinars, online resources. I guess we have the Summer Institute. I don't know if I'm being picked up or not, but all these opportunities are how, I guess, the goal is to bring people together. And Queens itself, we have examples like this. We have the Indigenous Knowledge Symposium, which is coming up in about a month, I guess. Yeah, so a little bit over a month. And I remember last year, that was a great way to came into this very room, and I was just starting my master's, knew a little bit less than I did now. And I just remember listening to so many speakers that had so much to offer. And it was the foundation of connections that I otherwise on campus probably wouldn't bump into these people, and I probably wouldn't have known anything about the work they're doing, or what they've been up to, or that they're doing a similar, or they're completing the life plan that I might foresee for myself. So they might be a great place to direct questions or concerns and so on. And I think that happenstance nature of it is almost innate to the dynamic of forming a mentorship network, because you never know who you're going to meet. But I think the best way is to go out to take those opportunities to meet people. And I think that that's the whole point of the IMNP and the IMNP at Queen's, is to create more opportunities. I think we're going to talk about this a bit more in the afternoon with, what do you guys want to see in terms of events that offer these opportunities and that offer support? And we're going to have a brainstorming session, unless I'm misinformed of the schedule. But so I think it's a great question. It's a great thing we should all be thinking about, because it's going to help you to think about that. But definitely it's just getting out there. I think a recent example was the NGGS, which is the National Gathering of Graduate Students. That happens annually. It was in Kamloops, BC this year. That was another great example of, you fly out and you are at this week-long conference with individuals you otherwise would have probably never met, and you're hearing all these stories. And my roommate was from rural BC, and his name's Sydney, and he was a firefighter, like a volunteer firefighter and you just hear all these wicked cool stories and like meet these awesome people. And what did I say? Did I just say fire? Oh yeah, so they had the wild, did I say wildfire? Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, so that's the happenstance nature of it, but it's going to those opportunities and I guess keeping up with that. Four Directions email, guys. I keep speaking for it, but it's been life-changing. But yeah, like those opportunities, you never know who you're going to run into, so it's best to take them. And if you go home with just having shaken some hands and maybe no mentors, there's always another event around the corner. You never know when you're going to meet the person that I guess is going to be your model.
Would anyone else like to speak to that question? Okay. Sorry, I've just got one request on here. It's actually putting Heather on the spot. It's asking Heather if she can answer this question. So the question is, what are the ways that we can develop infrastructure that we can connect to mentors outside of our immediate vicinity?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer immediately. I think one of the first things that comes to my mind is that, when I first started here at Queen's 4 years ago, I didn't know who was who or what anybody was doing, and it was really, really hard to dig to find out who was doing things. But now that we have, beyond the Four Directions Aboriginal Student Center and those fantastic weekly updates, we have the director of the Office of Indigenous Initiatives here, who might be able to speak as well to some of the work that her office is doing to try to build that network of support here on campus. But also, part of, I think, our goals here around having a mentorship network are, and it may be sounding a lot like supporting trainees, we really are here to build capacity across all sectors that are being represented here, whether it's community or new faculty, new researchers who are interested in doing research in a good way, or being an ethical and accountable practitioner, but don't yet have the skills and resources and tools to understand how to begin that process. And so our goal here is to develop that critical capacity in our institutions, but also, you know, to work towards, I guess, developing a critical mass to change some of those structures that we have in our institutions. And that's no small task. It's an ongoing process. I may have kind of deviated from the question a little bit, but I really wanted to make a point of that, that's a really important thing to have happen. If you think about the way in which universities operate, they do privilege one form of knowledge, and it's Western knowledge, Western science, and we need to start somewhere. And part of that is working together to raise awareness and to say, you know, enough is enough, and we need to see institutions like this one as a place to embrace many forms of, all forms of knowledge creation and legitimacy of knowledge that hasn't been traditionally the case in the past. So those are the kinds of things that come to my mind. And in terms of you know, finding mentors in nooks and crannies of the institution, I think part of that is also about what today is all about, is to start putting faces to names, start to reach out. And it occurred to me, you know, I never think of myself as being unapproachable, but I remember that when I was an undergrad, I was terrified to talk to profs, and just was like, they're not going to have time for me. They're not going to be interested in what I have to say. I'm just going to be wasting their time, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So even though I don't see myself as unapproachable, maybe I'm being perceived that way. So if you want to talk to me at the break, come talk to me, because I'm not too scary. I am sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. Depends who I'm talking with. And it's usually senior administration. So, oh, that's being recorded, on webinar. Yeah, so I think, does that answer your question, Sam? I'm not sure if it does really. It's really, we're trying to figure out what we want to be here, if anything, and what is it that you want, and that's how we're spending our afternoon, is really part two, sort of like looking around the room, getting to know each other, hearing about what the larger mentorship network's all about, but then saying, what do we want here at Queen's this year, right now, and then seeing how that might grow over time. Saw a question.
I don't want to take away from part two of this section, but I just wanted to plant a little seed in that from the Queen's perspective. There's a new office called the Informal Office of Professional Development and Education Scholarship, and I'm representing the Office of Global Health. And through the Office of Global Health, we offer an academic enrichment program, which is not comparably to other organizations well organized, but for the Faculty of Health Sciences and our medical and nursing students and rehabilitation services or rehabilitation school, we have partnerships in Africa, Asia, and we're starting in Northern Canada. And so I just wanted to echo that there is such a need for those formal and informal partnerships to be established so that we can implement more curricula, learning hours, cultural awareness hours, as well as actual service learning placements. So I think this is such a timely program, and so there's needs from all directions.
Apologies to those on the webinar who may not have heard all of that, but we were just hearing about a new, is it an office in global health here at Queen's that is going to be also available to our students here at Queen's, so we can probably talk to you more about that after the break. I'll pass it back to Colin.
Any other thoughts from our audience? And no questions from the webinar either. So at this point, we'll thank our student mentees. So if you can join me in thanking our student mentees for